This is the Total Perspective Vortex. I'm Tragula.
And I'm Christian.
And it's July 7th, 2020. That's actually, it's a Tanabata. It's a Japanese holiday, a wishing holiday.
Well, happy wishing holiday.
Yeah. Yeah, so today I thought we'd talk about a study that I saw on Summit News. Basically says that people who are easily offended are less productive, bad employees, which is...
That makes sense.
It does make a lot of sense, but I want to break down why it makes sense and sort of what's going on culturally with the left. And I think this is actually why this culture war has really lowered the productivity and morale of organizations. So we're actually doing a disservice now in schools where we're teaching children how not to engage with the world in a lot of ways.
Right.
So why don't you read us a little bit of that article, Christian, and get the ball rolling.
So a study conducted by a professor at San Diego State University has discovered that people who are easily offended make terrible employees because they never get anything done. The study conducted by Dr. Jeremy Burneth involved asking almost 400 employees, average age, say 26 on average, across 7 U.S. colleges about different events that have recently gotten, quote, substantial media attention. The study notes that the events consisted of 17 items developed to assess the proclivity to be offended, 8 moral outrage items, 11 microaggression items, and 9 political correctness items. It noted that some people have high proclivity to be offended, which the study describes as a state-like tendency to be sensitive to customarily innocuous societal events and traditions. For example, playing of the United States national anthem.
Those with a high proclivity to be offended have a tendency to view an array of events and or traditions as offensive.
Right.
So why do these people make bad employees? I think there's a couple of different causes here that we can talk about, especially like related to things we've talked about on the Total Perspective Vortex before. So let's first come at this from a tribal stack perspective. Okay, so we talked about how racism is just racial tribalism before, and it's very important, and tribalism is part of human nature, and it's important we inspect how we set up our tribes. And I propose that the correct basic orientation for your tribes is family, friends, community, country. Now this stack is also like a projection of yourself. So your sense of self just doesn't include you, but you can also project that out into the community. So out into society, out into your tribe. And that's really what tribalism is. It's sort of an extension of self socially. It's my family, my friends, my community, my country, right? Is that extension. But organizations often extend that tribal stack. They leverage that tribal stack in a large organization as well. You have that tribalism is going to exist within any tribe, and a classic organization that has strong utilization of the tribal stack and the projection of self from tribe is the military, because it's essential to make functioning military units. So you'll see that military units, they'll have their section, they'll have their platoon, army. They go up on levels, legions. I skipped some ranks there, but they have things organized down like that. So you actually have your section is like your family. It's like your lowest. It's 4 or 5 individuals who you spend most of your time with, and you take care of yourself. And often you'll see, like if you watch military movies, that they'll that there's a lot of rule breaking and exceptions made, and sort of secrets of the larger military community that are kept in the section, because you're supposed to be taking care of it. It's the most compassion based. But as you go up levels, the more serious, the more abstract things become. Now,
Right.
that's an introduction of the whole concept of the tribal stack. How this works here is, their tribal stack of someone who is morally focused like this. Like, they're still going to have a tribal stack, but if it's wrapped up in their social identities, like the fact that they're a woman, or they're non-white, or they're transgendered or something like that, then
Right.
that has nothing to do with the company.
Right.
Their their sense of self and tribalism will be abstracted away from the company. They won't have any loyalty to the company. They won't be invested in the business doing well. So this actually gets to my second point on this. Their goals will likely not include being a good employee.
Why would you? Well, I kind of get a sense, but why would you say that?
Well, it stems from the tribalism. If you're going to be a social activist, your energies and mental focus will be put towards that, not the bottom line of the company.
Right.
Right. Now this is not there, and these things can be mixed, right? Like, people are all on a scale. People are complicated. I'm talking about general trends of what this is going to indicate. So it's just generally in a company interest. If someone is going on about social justice issues all the time, that probably means that their mind is not focused on work. Their moral focus is on work. They have social issues that they want to attend to. So that can also be another reason for low productivity.
And we're seeing more and more companies now. I mean, when Black Lives Matter came out, like, everyone had their like logo and whatever that was changed and stuff. Like, you're seeing companies becoming more political, and I suspect it's this kind of driving force. These people that aren't focused, because to us, maybe on the right or even just centrist, it's like, what are you doing? Why are you being so political? Yeah. But if they have all these employees that are sitting there, that's all they're thinking about, I guess they jump at the opportunity. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, that's actually, there's enough of them within, like, communications departments and human resource departments. That's generally where they congregate on the levers of power. Yeah, so it's not actually in the interest in a lot of these corporations to take political positions on things.
Of course, yeah.
But it's not good for the bottom line. They see it as maybe it's pitched to them as a marketing opportunity and so forth, but it really it's a destructive force. It's taking energy away from, like, McDonald's making the most calorically efficient hamburger, right? So this is, so there's that lack of focus. Like, it's their goals, their aims are not aligned with the company, and that's what like the profit motive in that does. It's aligning force, so to get the company engaged in one goal, and they're not on board on that. But really, what the being easily offended is a tactic. And this is where we're going to sort of get into a little bit more of the meat of it. So yes, it has to do with the tribal stack. Yes, it has to do with the lack of goals. But then you can apply those things to people who are just passionate about other projects. And I think even like a well-oriented person, like if they're following my sort of tribal stack prescription I'm recommending of family, friends, community, country, they're going to be valuing their family and their friends probably more than their job.
Right.
So, I can't at this point say that this is the only reasons that the easily offended are bad employees. I think it goes deeper than that, because it actually it's a resistance to being offended is a resistance to the change that can be required for self-improvement, right? Overly
That's
offended.
Interesting.
Yes.
That's interesting.
So here, like I've talked about compassion and wisdom. What I haven't talked about underneath those is like that these virtues are resisted or repelled by underlying fears. So the fear, there's three existential fears that arise from being a conscious being. So there's the first is fear of God, or fear of being itself. So that's like the idea of being afraid of like how grand and marvelous the world is. The second is fear of death and fear of finitude. So
right.
you can talk about like how infinitesimal or how small you are in comparison to the larger world, and that you're only good. It's like, so you're temporarily limited, and this is key, that you're eventually going to die one day. This is why fear of death is so wrapped up in that. So you only have so much time on this earth, and the world will continue. It was before you and after you, and also you only have so much ability to affect the world. Is the other thing that you can see, right? That's the other fear of being small. So the other part of the fear of death.
Fear of like impotence or something.
Yeah, or it's a sense of impotence. And the third existential fear arises from the other two, is fear of virtue, or fear of the heroic path. So, or you could also talk about it as fear of your destiny. But that is, that's like a whole other episode in itself. So where these people who are easily offended are stuck is they tend to be on the compassion, that kind of thing, so that they are embracing possibilities. And if you embrace possibilities too much or too openly, and this is actually promoted by like the sort of the freedom of the will continentalism, you get into like the Never Land situation. So if you know Peter Pan, he goes off to Never Land. The sort of the land of creativity. It's the land of childhood, and it's a stage of development where you're looking, like, you're seeing all the possibilities, you're seeing all the worlds, like, not, and we're not talking about just the actual world, but all the potential of the world, and you're in awe of it. That's sort of the positive response. That's the opposite of the fear of God or fear of being, is the reverence for all the possibility.
Right.
The embracement of that. If you like, the story of Peter Pan is that there's actually two figures in Peter Pan who are afraid to leave Neverland. Right. There's Peter Pan and Captain Hook. So Peter Pan is afraid to leave because he doesn't want to give up all the potential, all the possibility. Captain Hook, on the other side, is living in Neverland because he's afraid of death. Right. And that's why, like, he's being stalked by time, right? The crocodile with the clock inside.
Right.
And all his crew is desperate for him to leave Neverland and give up his chasing of Peter Pan, because he's actually chasing that childhood wonder, that delusional state of the world, right? Of all the possibility and potential. So you can think of Neverland, or that area of Neverland is where the impossible utopia, where it exists, where Marxists imagine, right? Because the Neverland is what we can imagine. What we can imagine, and this is something I haven't said before, but it's critical, is what we can imagine goes outside of the bounds of what is actually in the potential. Okay. So we can imagine more than what is possible.
For sure, right.
And that sounds... In order to become an adult, you have to start taking that, like, to fully actualize as an adult and move with wisdom. It's sacrificing all that imagined possibility to what is actually possible, and that hurts. Right. And you're not always sure of what actually is possible, right? Is another problem with that. So Jordan Peterson's talked about before, of like how you have to burn away the dead wood. Like, some people are 95% dead wood. And that's that process of sacrificing the potential in order to actualize something. You're picking something to actualize, but even the process of not moving that far, just moving into just accepting that certain things are never going to happen. I'm never going to be an NBA All-Star, right?
Right. How come?
I think there's some things limiting my potential in that that category. Yeah, is
you don't have the right shoes.
The right shoes. It's just the shoes. It's just the shoes. But here's the thing: is I could be offended by you telling me that. And it sounds silly, but that's
no. It's funny, but you're also making a good point, right? Right. Yeah.
That's the defense, and this is why the people are easily offended. It's like you can't tell them no. You can't be an NBA All-Star. And like, oh, how dare you suggest that? Right. A trans woman of color cannot be an NBA All-Star, right? It's a sort of that mechanism is there.
Well, a more real world example would be, say, a small woman becoming a firefighter, even a larger, like beefier woman becoming a firefighter, saying no, you can't. Because you need to be able to pull people out of that fire. I mean, that's a perfect example of that. So, there's a bunch of things that I can't become based on my circumstances, but it's nothing to take offense to. It's just your circumstances. But what I'm saying is that we've seen that cultural backlash that you're describing there in instances like that. Yeah. And of course, they're trying to tweak it.
So here's where the Marxists end up, though, right? Because in order to move forward, to move out of Neverland, that sacrifice is required. Like if Peter wants to go back with Wendy, he has to sacrifice Neverland and grow up. Right. So if he wants to actualize something better, something real, you have to give that up. So they are offended as a defense of, like, how dare you suggest I can't do that? They're to defend Neverland, defend the impossible utopia, defend that world imagination that's outside the bounds of the potential that they want to exist in. That's required to move forward with action. That's you need to make the sacrifices in order to get stuff done. Right. So where they end up is because the right will often respond, well, what do you want? What are your demands? And they'll say, well, we want to talk about these things. We want you to give us money and space to talk about these things. So they want you to give you resources to continue the dream, to continue living in Neverland.
Right. That's funny.
Right. And there's a reason why it's called Neverland. Right?
Yeah.
These easy offended employees are putting up defense mechanisms to protect their Neverland. So they're not going to be productive because they're not willing to make the necessary sacrifices. And they're not fully actualized adults. They haven't gone through the complete process of becoming an adult.
Right.
From a spiritual and mental standpoint, they're still trapped like Peter Pan, and eventually they'll go from being Peter Pan to Captain Hook if they don't accept the required sacrifices and move on out of Neverland.
Do we see that with professors?
Yeah,
that's fascinating. So there's a lot of the Captain Hooks sitting there in academia.
Yes.
Yeah.
And our system has, because we've accommodated so much of this, accommodated offense so much, and created these safe spaces for people to exist in their Neverlands. It's coming back to bite us. It's coming back to bite our productivity, because we're becoming a nation of dreamers, not doers.
Right. And the dreams,
the dreams are impossible. Like, it's not.
The dreams are impossible. Right.
Yeah, the dreams are impossible. We refuse to give up the impossible dreams. so we can actually dream productively, dream about things that can and move the world forward. Dreams that make we want to follow and select the dreams that can be actualized, but we refuse to give up the impossible dreams. That's an episode of the Total Perspective Vortex.
Awesome.
All right.
So remember to share, like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Get the podcast growing and these ideas out there, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Sharing's so important.
Share.
Share. Social media
all these
share.
Demands.
All right. Take care, guys. Bye.
Cheers.